Last year, I helped Olamide get into degree apprenticeships at HSBC and Deutsche Bank. He's already started this September, and now I'm bringing him back for an exclusive interview so that you guys can learn exactly what he did and how you can replicate his success. In this first episode, we're going to cover the number one way to prepare for your interviews. Remember, you're going to have to do an interview at some point in the application process. So if you're not 10 out of 10 confident with interviews right now, this video is for you. Let's rock and roll. What do you think would be the number one sort of thing people could do to prepare for interviews for degree apprenticeships?
That's a difficult one because there's a lot of useful
Yeah.
things. I think ultimately, if you do a lot of practice, a lot of for my HSBC interview, I was told during half term that I made it to the assessment center. For 3 of the days, I spent 8 hours in the day just practicing the same questions over and over. And I did that for 3 days straight. So that was 24 hours of practice, like a whole day. Once you've practiced enough, you have so much confidence that when you're in the assessment center or interview process, whatever you're doing, you're not thinking about the little things. You're not thinking about, oh, did I say this incorrectly? What is this person going to be thinking of me? Because your answer, you have a good answer ready. You practice enough, you're able to think outside the box now. Because you've got your bases done, you can start building your castle. If you're still focused on building the base, you can't really focus on the flags and stuff like that of the castle. So once you've solidified your base, you can now show off in the interview or the assessment center, what sort of this company did X and X billion in transactions for that year. You can start thinking outside the box. You can start adding the cherry on top of the cake. So really focus on practice. Practice. I can't emphasize it enough. You have to practice. Most people think, oh, I practice enough. Once I've got it right, I practice. You have to keep practicing to the point where you don't get it wrong. When you know you don't get it wrong, when you're speaking, you're not stuttering or anything, that's when you know you practice enough. I think most people, they practice, they mess it up. They practice, they mess it up. But once they go it right once, that's it. They think they're done. That's not the case. You have to keep going and going and going. Once you've built that confidence and you're confident in yourself, now you're able to implement the strategies that I've said before. You can see someone in the corner that's not really speaking much, and you can bring them into the conversation saying, what do you think? But if you yourself is panicking, you're never going to even put your head up to see who's struggling in the interview. So make sure your confidence is high. Practice. What I like to do is I write down my question. I write it out first, then I read it, write it out again. If it's not good enough, then I read it. Then it gets ingrained into your mind as well. But obviously, don't memorize your answers. Make sure you're authentic. You're not speaking like a robot. You're able to maneuver your way through different questions, as I've said earlier. They may not ask you the same question you prepared for. Because you prepared for it well, you have the confidence to put the cherry on top of the cake and move your answer to fit that different question they've given you. So ultimately, practice. That gives you confidence. And with that confidence, you're able to shine more because you're not worried about the little things.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. I think that was really good because I think people go straight to what's the one thing I can do to stand out in an interview? But it's important about having that base, that foundation of just making sure you've practiced it. Then think about the bonus extra things you can do. I think that'll be very motivating actually for people who are watching this because you got into HSBC, you got into Deutsche Bank, and you're telling people that you practice for 8 hours a day, 3 days straight. Because I think, as you said, I think a lot of people have that mindset of, okay, let's just get this question ready. Boom, I've said it correct once. Now I'm going to be fine for the interview. No, because you've only done it once. You'll go to the interview and you're still going to be nervous, mess it up. But once you've drilled it over and over again, you kind of have to be a bit psychopathic with it. That's how much you do it. When I do presentations,
Yes,
for example, I had a university presentation which I had to do in June or something like that. And when I was making the presentation, I sat in a room for about 3 hours and I did the presentation over and over again. I did about 15 times in a row that presentation. By the end of the presentation, I was absolutely perfect with the delivery. Sure, I could have practiced it 1 or 2 or 3 times and it would have been pretty decent, but I wanted to make sure it was perfect. So when it comes to degree apprenticeship interviews, everyone knows how competitive they are. It's you have to be that psychopath who just sits there and you practice the question again and again and again and again and again until you get to a point, as I said, when you're in the interview, you're no longer stuck in your own head worrying about, oh, I'm so nervous. It's you can actually focus on the questions because you need that sort of brain power and that energy ready. Because if they do give you a difficult question, you want to just have all the energy to be able to, I can handle this question. I've done the practice. Compared to people who are still struggling with the normal questions. And then when a really weird, unexpected question comes up, they don't even know what to do there. So I thought, no, that was really good and really motivating there. So
to add to that as well,
go for it.
to add to that, in my actual HSBC interview, assessment center actually, my we were introducing ourselves to each other, and my microphone was off. And then when I was speaking, no one could hear me, and then a lot of the candidates started laughing. But because I turned it back on and I already had a lot of confidence in myself, that didn't actually deteriorate my ability. And ultimately, I ended up getting the offer as a result. That shows you that it's important to practice as much as you can. So, like you said, you can use your brain power to useful stuff that actually gets you the offer rather than using your brain power for the basic stuff that actually gets you into the interview. Because you had the skills to get into the interview. Now they're looking to see you have the skills to get to the final or the offer, final stage of the offer.
That's an amazing story because a lot of people in that same situation, the moment that happens, they go on mute, people start laughing at them. They would have then got sort of insecure, nervous. They would have then been on the back foot because now that they're inside their own mind, overthinking it, being like, oh, I've just made myself look like an idiot, I've fumbled the job, and then they can't focus on it. So I think that's why it's so sort of powerful to go in with that confidence. So when something inevitably does go wrong, something like that, it's like you're there to handle it. It's not a problem. I think it links back as well to what you said earlier with the group exercise. A lot of people worry about like what other people think of it. So what happens if I speak in a group exercise, I say something stupid? But you said earlier with that mindset, you're never going to see these people again. Like when you do this group exercise, so don't worry about what other people are thinking. Just go in there, give it your best shot. You've prepared beforehand, and that's all you need to do, really. And there we go. That is honestly the number one way to ace your degree apprenticeship interview. You might be a 4 out of 10 right now, a 5 out of 10, a 7 out of 10. But if you want to reach a point where you're a 10 out of 10, you're a killer, you're looking forward to your degree apprenticeship interviews, then that's what you got to do. Practice. In the next episode, we're going to zoom out from interviews to the application process as a whole and what you need to do to be a top 1% candidate. If you want to watch that, you can click here, or if it's not out yet, feel free to subscribe down below. Catch you in a moment.